Hello, everyone. Welcome to Climate Conversations, a platform where I interview environmental scientists and experts on topics like education, sustainability, and more. I'm your host, Kathy Yang. Today I'm here with Susan Golden, an En-ROADS ambassador of Climate Interactive. Susan is an environmental advocate and educator who has spoken to thousands of policymakers, students, and organizations across the world. She's also the founder of S. Golden Education. Climate Pathways is a collaboration between Climate Interactive, MIT Sloan, and the MIT Climate Policy Center. Climate Pathways uses two online simulations, C-ROADS and En-ROADS, to make informed decisions about our changing climate and greenhouse gases. Is there anything else you would like to add to your bio or the description about Climate Pathways?
Um, no, not really. I'm a retired high school science and math teacher, and I taught math through calculus, and I also taught all different sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, and it was when I started teaching environmental science that I realized how little people in society understand how society interacts with nature and the natural world around us, and that became my passion to teach people about environmental issues of the current age, the 21st century, and of course the most pressing one is climate change and global warming.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk a bit about climate change and global warming, how climate pathways can teach people to make informed decisions? So basically, how do policymakers use climate pathway simulations, such as En-ROADS, to make informed decisions?
Well, En-ROADS is an amazing climate simulator. It's based on the latest science, and mostly they use mostly peer-reviewed articles and information, and then they calibrate a simulator. It's what they call an aggregated simulator. So En-ROADS in particular, En-ROADS is Climate Interactive's premier climate simulator.
Mm-hmm.
C-ROADS talks about the different regional contributions that countries could make and regions could make to help uh, limit and mitigate global warming. But En-ROADS looks at the different solutions if we take them as global actions and to see what solutions we have and how the different solutions can make an impact. So some things that we can do as a global society will have a bigger impact on lowering our increased temperature than others. And En-ROADS allows people to see for themselves that impact. And it's free and it's available online to anybody. And I can show it to you now if you'd like, um, if that's all right. Or
Yeah,
is
yeah.
there anything else you'd like to know first?
Yeah, you can definitely show us and like talk about the toggles a bit and how people can use it easily.
So this is the En-ROADS Climate Simulator. And Climate Pathways, it's one of their two major simulators. And you can go out and just Google En-ROADS, EN-ROADS, and it should take you here. And this is it. If you click on the icon on the left, you'll get to the Climate Interactive website. En-ROADS itself comes in over 20 different languages. If English is not your first language, so you can explore the information using any language that you need to. It is a very open simulator, so if you do not agree with their assumptions, that you can actually change some of the parameters. It runs on over 20,000 different equations, and you can actually see the equations and the structure in the technical reference guide, which is available through here. There's also a user guide, which is simpler. This is the model technical reference here. You can see, as you see here, hold on, there are two main graphs up at all times. There are actually over 120 different graphs in 12 different categories. We'll be looking at some of them. Here are the impacts, and we can look at those. Greenhouse gas emissions, both in carbon dioxide as well as methane and nitrous oxide and the fluorinated gases, which are three, or yeah, four, if you count carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and the F gases. Those are four categories of some of the greatest, most potent, as well as the most out there greenhouse gases that are affecting the temperature of the planet. that we can look specifically at carbon dioxide emissions, since that's the most prevalent. That's the word I was looking for. We can talk about energy demand in different varieties of ways, as well as energy consumption, because that's one of the major drivers of global warming. We can also look at land, forestry, and food. We can look at carbon dioxide removals, and if you'd like a tour of this, we can do that in a little bit. And then there's other drivers, population and gross domestic product, as well as financial information. So there's quite a bit here. And then there's a model comparison. So if you want to look at both the past and the present and the future of how they arrived at their numbers, etc., you can look at the model comparison down here. Also, if you really like more than 2 graphs, you can go down here and we can look at Kaya graphs, which demonstrate the drivers of global warming. And there's also miniature graphs, so you can look at 12 graphs at once, which is a little overwhelming for me, so I'm not going to go there. Let me go back. So these are the best 2 icons to know. This is to reset your policies and assumptions if you want to try something special or different, and this resets the graphs to the 2 original ones, which are the global sources of primary energy and greenhouse gas net emissions. And this back and forward, this replays a slider move. So down here are 19 sliders, and you move a slider and see the results of that action. So if we can move sliders in our energy supply makeup, transportation, buildings and industry, growth of population or economic growth, carbon dioxide removal, other sources of greenhouse gases. So these are the different categories, and we move sliders. And this was made by economists for world and business leaders. So this is being in the terminology is often in economics. So for instance, by moving a slider in most of these, the main sliders, you are taxing or subsidizing an action. So if we were to subsidize renewables, for example, I would move the slider all the way to the right, and we see right away, that's why this is such a quick simulator, we see right away that we're using more renewables and our greenhouse gas emissions will go down. And this is the, they don't want to say predicted, but the possible temperature increase by 2100. So let me just quickly back up and then I'll bring it back to you, Kate, but I do want to finish giving you a tour of the screen. As you can see, this is a very big simulator. And on the left, these sources of primary energy do need a little explanation because coal is brown, and that's the amount of energy we get from coal. And by the way, this is calibrated to past history up until the current time, and then it's projected forwards using systems dynamics based differential equations. And the red is oil. Now, in this simulator, oil is also petrol or gasoline. So because gasoline is an oil-based product. So a lot of people down here think this gas is gasoline, but this is natural gas or methane, which we use in the United States primarily in heating and cooking. And oil are all the transport-based fuels, gasoline, petrol, etc. So this is methane or natural gas. Renewables are all bundled together as solar, wind, hydro, geothermal. Bioenergy is the burning of plant material to produce energy. Nuclear power, as you know, and you can see, we really overall don't get much energy from nuclear power. And then they allow us, should we do thorium fission or nuclear fusion, we could investigate, or some other net zero carbon-free energy source, we could experiment with that. But it's not, doesn't exist yet, so you don't see it on that graph. And as we make our scenarios, you will see the blue lines change from the black lines, or what if we do business as usual, and that's the baseline. And as we make changes, the blue line will show what our changes go. So one last comment, this is a systems dynamics model. So if you want to see the effect of one action, then you need to look at it by itself, because these things build on one another. And sometimes you'll think you're making something will make a big difference, and actually it won't, because it's had an effect with different slider moves. So with that, I'll
Oh,
Is there something you'd like to do? We run this as workshops. Can also be used in a role play game, which is really a lot of fun, where you pretend you're in the United Nations General Assembly and a climate summit, and that's always a lot of fun in the workshops, and it can be used as an assignment. And it goes deeper as well. But before I go any further, is there any questions you have about this so far?
wow, thanks. Like the explanation helped a lot. It's very in depth. Yeah, and the Model UN like simulation sounds really cool. I was like wondering how young adults or like teens, I guess, could use this, get involved and help make a change in their local community. Like,
Great question. If a teen wants to use this, they can just learn to use it. There's a lot of training material on the En-ROADS website. As a matter of fact, I'll click here right now, and you can see this is the page it gets to. And if you are actually interested in learning it, you can read these different things. And if you scroll all the way down, anyone can lead an En-ROADS event. I am an En-ROADS Climate Ambassador. I am not an employee of En-ROADS, but I have been trained to use this, and I have done many presentations. As a matter of fact, if we zoomed in here somewhere, I live in the New York metropolitan area, so somewhere around here you'll see my name show up. But if we keep scrolling, there's the En-ROADS resources. And then when you hit that, here's information about, there's a workshop, as I mentioned, there's the role play game, and then if you were a teacher, I don't know if a student can do it on their own, but there's a guided assignment
oh,
that
okay.
you could use to guide yourself through these actions. And then, sorry about that, then there's all sorts of supports because it is very big and very broad, and you can see some of them here. And then if you're anybody, they put these, Climate Interactive put out all these slide decks and handouts, and they're free and available to be used. You just download them, and um, you're allowed to modify them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're Creative Commons. So you are allowed to modify all these slides, and there's some very interesting information there. But so that's how a teenager could use it. I'd like to go into one more thing in depth, if that's all right with you,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
about using this. So when we do a workshop, it's an interactive activity. I love this saying. It's by a professor at MIT whose picture is on that Climate Pathways thing, and that is Professor John Sterman. Research says that showing people research doesn't change minds, and that's, if you think about it, it's kind of funny that we're using research to say that
Yeah.
research doesn't change minds. And so this simulator was invented for people to go and explore and look for themselves to see what might happen and how things go. For example, a lot of people want to plant trees, and planting trees is a great thing for biodiversity and habitat protection, as well as health and shade for people. But planting trees is not going to solve our temperature increase. And one of the issues, and when I run in a when I run a workshop, I like to start. These are my favorites. That's why they have the stars. You can also, I like to print this up, and we aim for the United Nations, what they voted on at the Paris Accord, which is to try to keep the temperature between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius.
Oh.
And right now the temperature increase is 3.3. So what
Oh.
actions, a workshop would begin by asking, what actions do you think we should take or have seen that might help us to mitigate or lower global warming? And
Mm-hmm.
as we take actions, hopefully this temperature change will go down, and that blue line will end up somewhere between the dotted lines or even below, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because already from pre-industrial era, you can see, and by the way, anytime you click on anything or touch, it's not even click, you can actually see a real data point. So students could even write whole reports based on the information out of this, and you can see here that we're already almost at that limit that was voted into,
Oh.
in the Paris Accord. So that's one thing. And one more thing before we go on. In a workshop, I would just be doing this. But if somebody's really interested and wants to play with this, not only can we move sliders and then try to understand why, what happened. So for example, if I say that we're going to move, let's support making transport more energy efficient. Cars and buses and trucks actually aren't all that energy efficient. And if we did support that, you will see that our whole entire, the amount of energy that we need as a world, it would shrink. We don't need as much energy. So there's our primary goals of energy. And just based on using less energy, our temperature is going to go down a little bit. And I'm going to replay that one more time. And because I used just transport, you'll notice that the that the fuel that went down most is oil, which is what we use to power automobiles and most automobiles and trains and planes, etc. So that's one. But also what one can do is click on either the title or the three dots on the right there, and you get a whole new half a screen. And this has what they call detailed sliders. These are sliders. And so the top one is the same as the main slider, and we can go into details about subsidizing renewables. So now we're getting more of our energy from renewables. And if you watch the replay, you'll see that the renewables area, which is green, it grows. And when one grows, often the others shrink because it's replacing. So you can see that it replaced some of the gas and some of the oil. I mean, some of the coal. And it didn't replace much of the oil because we still use the oil for our transport systems. But we can scroll down here and see that there's, again, this is made for decision makers. So if they really want to talk about implementing a real subsidy or tax, and when, you can see how we have some capabilities. If there are people nowadays who want to explore more hydrogen solutions, and hydrogen is a possibility for another fuel, and we could talk about that in more detail. But I want to show you about the simulator itself. Not only do you have these other sliders to do more detailed changes or modifications, you can read about what they mean. Anytime you see a triangle anywhere in the simulator, you can get more information. So if this goes really deep, it's as deep as you want, rather than, and same with the graphs as well, if you want more explanation on the graphs. And you can often find, somewhere in there, you will find the documents from which they calibrated their graphs.
Oh, okay.
And you can get a third graph, and if these are ones that they think are pertinent to this slider. But you can access all of these also from the other two menus. And one last thing on this, that's the graph here, but once you're in this screen, if you click the eye, then it takes you to their user manual. And for every slider, this is so amazing, there are examples and big messages. So subsidizing renewable energy helps to limit coal and gas demand and reduce future temperature as it becomes the most affordable source of electricity. So key dynamics, this is for every one of those 19 sliders. Potential co-benefits, because the people at Climate Interactive want you to think of when we take action on climate change, often the actions that we take on climate change will have co-benefits to human health as well as biodiversity, etc. So they want you to think about those co-benefits as well as equity considerations, because sometimes our actions will hurt some people. So for example, there's financial and market price of electricity, for example. So if this is the market price of electricity, if in this case we only moved our one slider, just to show you, or two, energy efficiency and renewables, so our actions are actually going to lower the price of electricity. So in terms of equity concerns, how does this impact poorer people and rich people and marginalized people and all people around the world? And you can see here that we're actually, by subsidizing renewables and increasing energy efficiency, we are going to bringing the price of electricity down. which is good action. But if we brought the price of electricity up, then it provides a point of conversation to see
Mm-hmm.
what they want to do. So, for example, if I put a really high carbon price on energy, you'll see that I've just made energy very expensive, for example. But also note, when we talk about the impact of actions, how that one slider brought down the temperature by half a degree already, the temperature increase by half a degree. So I've gone a long way to reduce global warming by putting a high carbon price on carbon. And I look at that and I can see that this is at $250 per ton, as you see. And
Oh,
again, we go into these detailed sliders and they give us a whole bunch of different options that we might want to investigate. And once again, I'm just going to go here because I didn't even finish big messages, key dynamics, co-benefits, equity considerations, and then it goes into the model structure in case you're interested. And a place that I've gone to is not only facts, the frequently asked questions, but down here in the footnotes, once again, you can usually find their sources and go and investigate it themselves in case you question their source or
mm-hmm.
their methodology. So that's a quick tour of En-ROADS. And one last thing before I finish. The one thing that Climate Interactive would really appreciate, because their funding is based on usage, is if you go into help, if you do something, and I will be doing that for our discussion here, is we're going to register an En-ROADS event, and even if you talk to your parents, they would love it if you'd fill out that form. And what's very cool about it is when you're done, you can copy your scenario link as I'm doing here, and I can share it in chat or I can share it anywhere, and which I'm sharing with you now. I don't know if that got
Yep,
recorded,
I got it. Yeah.
but now you have the exact same scenario that I have.
Oh, wow.
So that's a starting point too. So it's a lot of fun to use. These are some boring graphs, so let's go back to the original graphs. And do you have any questions? Is there something you'd like to see or learn about?
Yeah, like what are some like recent updates to the program, if there are any, or yeah, enhancements, I guess.
Well, they're updating this constantly.
Mm-hmm.
They release an update every month, and based on the latest information, sometimes they tweak the numbers. For example, I have been working with En-ROADS for 7 years, and their base temperature increase used to actually be over 4 degrees Celsius, and it's down to 3.3.
Mm-hmm.
But then he described the reason it should be 3.6. But one of the things they put in is what they call, let me see where to think about where, is a economic damage function. So, as we have a big flood like they've done in Texas recently,
Yeah.
when you have a huge flood like that, it damages the economy, it damages buildings and businesses. And so there's less economic growth in that particular place. So one of the things they have put into En-ROADS is what they call an economic damage function. And so economic growth, let me see that slide. Let's go get that graph up if I can find it. That's the biggest challenge is there's so many graphs that
Yeah.
that sometimes it's difficult to find the one you want, which is one reason why. Well, let's just see. Here, this is it. Population growth. If this is GDP, gross domestic products, energy, I guess per capita will do, or gross world product. That's what I want. So this is just from temperature, the scenario of no economic impact from temperature. So there you go. If they took away the damage function, if we said that we're still growing and no businesses were damaged, we would have this much global warming. Well,
Oh.
this is the domestic product or the world product, and it's less because there's damage. And by the way, if we want explanations, once again you have you can
Mm-hmm.
always, when I do this, and if I'm stuck for words, I will always just bring up the explanations and read them. So
Mm-hmm.
one can always do that to learn more. So it's amazing what you can learn here. So that's one of their more recent changes. They didn't always do methane, nitrous oxide, and F gases, and that's now captured. And hydrogen, acknowledging the use of hydrogen as a fuel is also um, that's a quite new update. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay, wow. Um, like, is there anything like last things you want to say, like big picture or conclusion? Like, what would you recommend to people of all ages to get started? Um, yeah.
well, to get started, as you see, this is very broad and this is very deep. There's a bunch of things you could do. You could just experiment with this. Go in and start moving sliders and clicking dotted three dots and clicking triangles, and you can learn so much all by yourself. You can go into another level by looking at their sources. You can contact Climate Interactive, the En-ROADS people. You can do it
Mm-hmm.
through this icon, get to
Mm-hmm.
that web page and ask them for a workshop or a little class, and I'd be glad to do it myself. As you know, I'm located in New Jersey, but as you mentioned earlier, I've worked with people around the world. It's really a lot of fun to meet people from different
Mm-hmm.
countries with different backgrounds and different interests. So just go play with it is what I recommend. And if you have questions, lots and lots of support pages and questions out there in their knowledge base, and they're very happy to help out. There's 13 people in the organization, and they're really very nice and very friendly. And I'd be more than willing to help anybody learn uh, En-ROADS as well.
En-ROADS is very like complicated, but also like I think it's easy to get started. It's very like impactful, like the Model UN simulations and everything.
The Model UN, the way that works is they actually do they split the group up into between 6 or 9 different groups for
Uh-huh.
world leaders, climate hawks, conventional energy. Um, Also, you could do developing nations, developed nations, banking and finance, and each of those groups, they on that website I showed you, I can take you there. If we do the climate action simulation, down here. So here are 18 versions, and there are briefing statements. So they've done all the work for us. We could see here, if I go up, it's a page and a half, and it tells you what your goals are as a group. And you come up with some goals, and then during the course of negotiations, each group gets to move a slider or undo another group slider, which is
Oh.
always fun. And order matters there because conventional energy will often undo, for instance, what climate hawks might want. And
Mhm.
uh, and so it's a lot of that's really a lot of fun. And you go through negotiations, and one of the facilitators, is moving sliders as each group makes a proposal for global action. So also, I do want to remind you and everybody, when you're using this is a global simulator. And so when you move a slider, it's what if everyone on the planet did this? What if every country took this action? And then you want to take this in order to make action locally. You want to, the expression, think global, act local.
Mhm.
So you want to take this and say, how can we in our local community or region, how can we get closer to this action as a global basis? So that's what this is to do, because people don't always know what to do or what will have the biggest impact.
A great piece of advice, like thinking globally but acting locally. I think that's very important.
Yes.
Thank you.